And if it does, then the next step is to see whether it is better than the standard treatments, and that's called a phase 3 study. And typically a phase 3 study is a randomized study. So what that means is half of the patients get the standard treatment and half of the patients get the new treatment. The computer just randomly says this patient's going to get treatment A, that old treatment, and this patient's going to get treatment B, the new treatment. And it turns out that's the only scientific way of proving whether or not the new treatment is or is not better than the old treatment.
You know, I read a lot on cancer, lung cancer treatment, and, you know, all the statistics and all the information were grim, and those were the norm type treatments. So, you know, I figured I'd take a shot, you know, long shot as it may be, but go with one of the clinical trials. So I elected to go back to Fort Worth because it was a more stable environment, being that, you know, I have small children, my wife was there.
Based on talking with them, we felt very sure that if it wasn't helping, they would be able to realize that right away. They would take us off. Hopefully it wouldn't do too much harm. I mean, because we understood that this was a drug they were still studying, and they don't know all the side effects. They don't know everything about it, but why not? It just might help.
So enrolled in the clinical trial rather than going on the traditional chemo treatment, and you know, was on clinical trial for 6 cycles of chemo from March of 06 to July of 06.
About every 3 weeks, he would go in and get a new dose of the chemo. In between that, he would go in and they would, you know, do lab, you know, draw his blood, take a lot of x-rays, like not the normal x-rays, but like CT scans and stuff like that. To me, he just was going to the doctor a little bit more. I
think the doctors were able to get good data from my participation in the clinical trial. And personally, my participation in that clinical trial only strengthened my resolve to seek out other treatments. And the results of most of these clinical trials probably won't help me immediately, but, you know, they might benefit somebody else. So, you know, that's what you can get out of, you know, participating in a clinical trial. I'm not ready to throw the towel in yet, so, you know, I still keep looking. And I've found other experimental type of treatments, which is what brought me out here to California.
It is hard on my oldest daughter, Reagan. She's used to Daddy being here because her and Daddy did lots of stuff.
Stay in touch in different ways, whether it's talk on the phone at least 3 or 4 times a day. We have internet cameras where we do web chat or video chats. We made the decision for us to be apart for the short term so that, you know, we can be together for the long term. Don't give up. I mean, when they tell you lung cancer is hopeless, I mean, just don't give up. You know, if you have to do a clinical trial or 2 or 3, if it's not going to help you, help somebody else.
We think we have a pretty good feel for what the side effects are going to be, although we don't know for sure. We would not be doing this if we did not think that there is a good chance that the new treatment may be better than the old, although we don't know that for sure.
You know, I had the hair loss. I mean, I think I lost all my hair except my eyebrows. Had weight loss. I had a lot of joint pain, muscle pain. That goes away after time. I mean, once you get the chemo out of your system, the one thing that's lingering is I have a lot of neuropathy, which is numbness of my feet. Actually, it's numbness of your hands and feet, but in my case, it's just my feet. I'm on a quest to fight this ailment and possibly get more research dollars and funding for lung cancer. Recently, a guy came over to my house because he asked me, you know, who are you? Are you famous? I'm like, no. I'm everybody, but I'm nobody. You know, what's happened to me can happen to anybody. And it's far too often happens in our society that people get misdiagnosed and then only to find out later that they have an advanced form of lung cancer. In fighting cancer, I tell cancer survivors and cancer patients that I meet all the time, they have to find the hidden letters in cancer, the H and the V. The H is for hope and the V is for victory. And in finding those letters and understanding what they mean, the hope will lead you to victory.
You gotta be patient and strong and believe that Gerald will come home again.
So as long as somebody's working in the cancer field, that leads me to believe that somebody's possibly trying to research and find a cure.
When you're diagnosed with this kind of thing, it's not something you've looked into before, Everybody was here for me. Church, when I was going through chemo, people took me to chemo and people made me meals. I really like to be outside. That's why I walk as much as I can. The surgeon I went to said, I want you to walk 45 minutes every day. He said, you get out there. I said, it's December. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, you put a scarf around your face, you put a hat and gloves on, and he said, you walk. In all these times, I had been emailing Dr. Rabin back and forth. I emailed him and I said, what do you recommend? And he said that there was a clinical trial that was starting up there that I would be perfect for, I was a really good candidate for. Basically, it's a once-a-day pill. I knew I could carry on my life, I knew I could work, I knew I could do most anything I wanted to, like I have been for the last 3 years, and not be, not be confined to home or bed or anything. The first 4 weeks of the trial were more rigorous. I had to go up to Boston every week for the first 4 weeks, and I had a lot of tests. I still go up once a month, but I only have scans every other month. It's about 90 miles. It takes us about an hour and a half. We try to leave a little bit earlier because Boston traffic is pretty difficult in the morning. I like going up there because they're always positive. They just make me feel good. And basically, I got the consent form. It has everything in there about anything that could go wrong, anything that they will do, anything that you have to do, anything that they won't do for you. And that part is kind of scary. What insurance covers, what the drug company pays for, what you have to pay for. And the other thing is you can leave the trial at any time. You are not obligated to stay. If I signed the papers and the next day decided I didn't want to, I could leave. And that made me feel like I had some control over that. So it's really signing the paperwork, getting it started, and then just following what the protocol requires, which is just a lot of medical testing, in my case. And there's a whole protocol of first month you do this, second month you do this. So it's all spelled out. You know exactly what's going to happen. So it's not like there's any surprises. The people up at Dana-Farber have been wonderful to me. I've never had so much attention in my whole life.
So the clinical trial process starts with going over the consent form, and an integral part of the team is going to be the research coordinator or the research nurse. And this is a person that the patient's going to come to know and love well and interact with a lot, because the research coordinator or the research nurse is going to be the primary contact with the patient. And this is a person that typically is going to make sure the patient gets set up for all the appropriate visits, handles the logistics of things, and is also the person who the patient's going to communicate with between visits very typically. One of the advantages of going on a clinical trial is because patients are monitored so much more frequently, many studies have shown that in general they tend to do better. Even if they got randomized to standard of care, in general they tend to do better just because of the more frequent and more thorough monitoring.